Luna 2 is potentially gonna be even crazier than Luna 1, not just because Albedo and Durin are getting involved in the story, or Rarier's battle against Columbina, or Varka finally making an appearance, but also because of Nefer's potential true identity. But first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. Without further ado, pet your ashru and let's get this video started. First of all, let's talk about the Archon Quest. Somehow the Traveler and Columbina will end up in a very strange place with a crimson moon in the sky and a lot of unified nation structures, a place that Lauma seems to define as a soulless husk devoid of Kuvaki, and interestingly, Act 3 is called A Nation That Doesn't Exist, so fingers crossed we might learn something more about the unified nation, finally. Of course, it seems that we're gonna find the crimson shadow that sank into the abyss when the iridescent moon shattered, but what's terrifying is that red rift underneath it, because that looks like a place where a boss fight is gonna take place. We heard Columbina explaining how she's constantly losing power because the world itself is draining it, but later in the video we heard Durin say that this is happening because as long as the world rejects her existence, she will never be whole, so Tevat basically sees her as something that shouldn't exist. Columbina then wondered if this is what the iridescent moon wished for, but do remember that this might be something she'll say in another moment entirely, because she told us in Luna 1 that the moons don't devour each other, so the iridescent moon shouldn't be trying to drain her powers. Moving on, I honestly don't know who these kids are, nor who they're trying to eliminate, but since they're also in a unified nation building, it might be something that happened in Kanria in the past. The same goes for Vedafornir and Reindaughter, especially considering how Reindaughter is now a shade, so I don't think she can just meet him that easily. My theory here is that Vedafornir had lost his ability to see the future long before the cataclysm happened, maybe because of some experiment with the abyss, but he suddenly saw a glimpse of the future, the prophecy of the cataclysm for which he was imprisoned and blinded on Ermin's orders. Another memory of the past is Rarer talking about people trying to call forth a dead moon's ghost, something he seemed to mock back then, but that he eventually pursued himself. He is the guy with brown hair sitting at a table going through a list of people he most likely eliminated considering how he crossed their faces, and those people are probably the ones we saw on the ground later in the trailer, which looks like he made sacrifices to achieve something regarding the moon. Now, something very peculiar is this chess game we saw while Vedafornir and Reindaughter were talking. Around the chessboard we can see the usual statue of a woman holding a cup in her hands, but this time there's also a new one, holding something that looks like a lantern. I am so curious about these statues you can even begin to understand. Anyway, on the chessboard we see 5 pieces. On the team on the left, there's a piece that looks like a shield of some sort, it's really hard to see. Next to it there's a unicorn, which might be Reindaughter since it could represent one of her creations, and in front of them there's Surtalogi's claymore that we saw in Skirk's story quest. On the opposing team there's a wolf inside a moon, and if the wolf symbolizes a hunter, then it could be Rarer, who is hunting the moon, while the one in front of it is quite troubling. I think there are 2 options here. Either that's Vedafornir, and since he's Dainslev's brother they may look similar, or this is Vedafornir's chessboard and the piece is actually Dainslev, mainly because we heard him talking about a friend who betrayed him, so if that friend is Rarer, it might be that the wolf piece behind him will soon cross to the other side and become his enemy, just like it apparently happened in the past. There are also other pieces that represent the Abyss, and we actually saw those exact same pieces right before we fought Gosoithoth with Mawika. Moving on, we heard Paimon wondering why he is attacking the damselette, but he is not rarer since we would expect him to attack her. This means that someone else has suddenly and unexpectedly decided to attack her, and my bet is on Dainslev again. Moving on, we finally saw Varka in all his glory. His model looks just amazing, and he's joining the fight against Rarer because it's a threat he can ignore. He also proposed a plan that requires all the factions of nod-krai to join hands against Rarer, and it seems that the one who is supposed to convince the factions is Nefer, the one who has connections with all of them. And I'll just say it, either her informant from Mondstadt is one of the cats, or it's Diluc. Anyway, Arlecchino is also going to help us. We saw her fighting the Wild Hunt in her Perwer form, but as it was hinted in the livestream, she doesn't do anything for free. There must be something she wants in return. One of my viewers made me notice that the one who gave the order to retrieve the moon marrow was a female harbinger, but Sandrone clearly said it wasn't her. It's also obviously not Columbina, and Signora is long dead, so the only other woman in the organization is Arlecchino, but she had been stuck in Snezhnaya with Project Stuja. So who gave the order? Is it finally time for the 10th unknown harbinger to make an appearance, perhaps? Now, it seems that we will join forces with everybody, just like Varka proposed, and I think the plan is to trick Rarer into the Kuvaki Experimental Design Bureau, where Sandrone and Pulonia will try to defeat him. I don't think anyone has believed for a second that she could actually pull it off, otherwise we wouldn't have seen him fighting against Columbina right after. I swear, everybody in this game seems to be able to fly. Mawika was flying while fighting Capitano, and so did Nahida against Scaramouche, and yet when they become playable, they all forget how to do that. Anyway, Columbina seems to have acknowledged how much of a threat Rarer actually is, so she decided to use herself as a bait to let us escape. And it seems that she was right, since Rarer easily broke her shield. Now, we saw that we will fight Rarer in a special domain that honestly reminds me a lot of the plane of Euthymia. In this place, there's a white bright moon on one side and something red on the other. In the beginning, when Rarer isn't even trying, the moon is shining and the place is mostly white, but when Rarer brings out his shattered moon and gets serious, the place becomes completely red and we can see the hands of the Wild Hunt trying to grab the moon. By the way, did you see this attack? Doesn't that look awfully familiar? Anyway, I think this fight will take place inside Columbina, a domain within her consciousness, so the moon is her own frost moon marrow and Rarer is trying to steal it. How are we even going to stop him? I have no idea. We couldn't even defeat Arlecchino while she wasn't even really trying to eliminate us, so there should be no way we could ever stop Rarer, especially considering that each sinner is strong enough to take on the whole world. But we do have the Eternal Moon Marrow inside, so that may make a difference in this fight. Let's move on to the next section of Luna 2, Ruins Exploration Fieldwise Center. Apparently, Sethos and some members of the Temple of Silence rescued Layla and someone else they didn't want to tell us about, who fell through quicksand and ended up in some ancient ruins while stargazing in the desert. But for whatever reason, Nefer and Yahoda will get involved into this whole ordeal, and this is where things get interesting. Layla was found in a state of delirium and we heard her talking about the moons of Teyvat, which is something most people don't even know about. But we also saw some pretty interesting text appearing on the screen. I couldn't figure out some of the words since it's only consonants, but we did read Amon Henti Amenti Mek Desert Waf Hasut Herishaf Sobek. Now, Deshret's Arsgetia name is Amon in Deshret script, while Kentiamenti comes from Kentiamentiu, an ancient Egyptian deity whose name was used as a title for Osiris and Anubis, so we could think that Amon Kentiamenti is Deshret's full name. Mek Desert Waf Hasut means protector of the desert who curbs foreign land. This is an Nepti name, a symbolic name that the pharaohs used to connect themselves to the goddesses of Upper and Lower Egypt, and an almost identical one with Kemet, meaning Egypt, instead of desert, seems to have been Ramses II's Nepti name, which is why we know its translation. By the way, Amon Henti Amenti Mek Desert Waf Hasut is also written on Deshret's sarcophagus. Lastly, Herishaf and Sobek, which in ancient Egypt were two gods, in Genshin Impact are two of the 7 pillars of Deshret, the Goat King and the Crocodile King. What's also interesting is that another name appeared on the screen for a few instants. Thoth, another Egyptian god, but also another one of Deshret's pillars, the Ibis King. Now, these 3 kings appeared for a few seconds on a floor painting in the trailer. The Goat King is in the center, the Crocodile King is on the right, and the Ibis King is on the left, but he is not alone. There's also a black cat next to him. Now, there was an Egyptian goddess named Bastet, my favorite one actually, I even have a small Egyptian statue of her, who was depicted as a cat, and in Egypt, cats were extremely revered, especially those owned by the royals that were usually dressed with gold accessories. Reminds you of someone? Even more interestingly, the name of one of Bastet's sons was Nefertum, so we can basically interpret this in 2 ways. Either the black cat from the mural is simply Ashru, or it's Nefer herself, and she was the Ibis King's cat. Of course, I think and I hope it's the latter, because it would also explain why Nefer is in Sumeru just when these ancient ruins were suddenly discovered. But also because she can summon shades of herself that talk like mechanical constructs, which were widely used in Deshret's era. Well, there is a third option. Nefer could simply be the Ibis King, and she even has a massive golden ibis statue in her office, but I kinda doubt it. By the way, in case you were wondering about the last 3 pillars, this is Bennu, the most radiant, the great bird winging skyward towards the sun. This is the Saint Shesepang, the most holy, a lioness with a human head, and the last one is Apep, the Dragon King. When it comes to the ancient temple, it was most likely not dedicated to Deshret, but maybe it was built by the Goat King's followers, just like the Temple of Silence follows Hermanubis. This should also mean that Herishaf was the proud and solemn king we heard about, but he probably did something wrong. Maybe he tried to become eternal using the abyss power that Deshret acquired thanks to Nabu Malikata, but in the end his fragile crown shattered. I think you probably figured out how excited I am about both the Archon Quest and the Sumeru event, but luckily we won't have to wait too long. Luna 2 is already almost here. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. I suppose my next videos will be about Luna 2, one for the Archon Quest and one for Nefer, and I hope we will also learn a lot about Octavia. I mean, everything about Luna 2 is so exciting, I really can't wait a second more. Well then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.